I never thought my sister would humiliate my 8-year-old son at his own birthday party, calling him the problem child in front of our entire family. What happened next changed everything between us forever. My name is Rachel, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a school counselor in Denver, Colorado, where I live with my husband Mark and our son Tyler. Tyler is 8 years old, and he's the light of my life. He's curious, creative, and sees the world in ways that constantly amaze me. But not everyone in my family sees him the way I do. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My younger sister Jessica has always been the golden child in our family. She's 31, married to a successful lawyer named David, and they have 2 daughters, Emma and Lily, who are 9 and 7 respectively. Jessica lives in the same suburb as our parents, about 20 minutes from my house, and she's always been quick to point out how perfectly behaved her daughters are compared to other children. Tyler has always been different. He's incredibly bright, but he learns differently than other kids. He has ADHD, which was diagnosed when he was 6, and he's also highly gifted, which creates a unique set of challenges that most people don't understand. He can solve complex math problems in his head, while struggling to sit still during story time. He can build elaborate structures with blocks, while having difficulty following multi-step instructions. He's passionate about dinosaurs, space, and anything involving how things work, but social situations sometimes overwhelm him. When Tyler was younger, family gatherings were often stressful. He would get overstimulated by the noise and activity, leading to meltdowns that Jessica would watch with barely concealed disapproval. While I learned to recognize his triggers and help him navigate challenging situations, Jessica saw only a child who was disruptive and poorly disciplined. Our parents, Robert and Linda, tried to be supportive, but they came from a generation where children were expected to be seen and not heard. They loved Tyler dearly, but they often seemed unsure how to handle his unique needs. They would make well-meaning comments about him being spirited or needing more structure, not understanding that what worked for typical children might not work for Tyler. The tension with Jessica had been building for years. She had a way of making subtle comments about Tyler's behavior that always left me feeling defensive and angry. At Emma's birthday party last year, Tyler had gotten excited about the magic show and had called out answers before being asked. Jessica had pulled me aside afterward and suggested that Tyler might benefit from being enrolled in social skills classes, as if his enthusiasm was a character flaw that needed correcting. During family dinners, Jessica would make pointed observations about how well her daughters sat at the table, while Tyler might fidget with his napkin or ask to be excused when he finished eating. She never said anything directly critical, but her meaning was always clear. Her children were well behaved, and mine was not. The most frustrating part was that Jessica had never made any effort to understand Tyler's differences. When I tried to explain ADHD and giftedness to her, she would nod politely and then make comments about how all children need consistent boundaries. She seemed to believe that Tyler's challenges were the result of permissive parenting rather than neurological differences. Mark, my husband, had grown increasingly frustrated with Jessica's attitude over the years. He's a software engineer, analytical by nature, and he had done extensive research on ADHD and twice exceptional children when Tyler was diagnosed. He understood Tyler's needs and had become fiercely protective of our son. More than once, he had suggested that we limit Tyler's exposure to Jessica's criticism, but I always resisted. She was family, and I kept hoping she would eventually come around. Tyler himself had begun to notice his aunt's attitude. He had asked me once why Aunt Jessica never seemed happy when he was around, and my heart had broken trying to explain that some people just didn't understand how special he was. He had started becoming quieter during family gatherings, which was particularly heartbreaking because Tyler's natural state was joyful and exuberant. This year, as Tyler's 8th birthday approached, I was determined to make it special. He had been working so hard at school, learning strategies to manage his ADHD, while also being challenged academically through the gifted program. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had been incredibly supportive, helping him channel his energy productively while nurturing his intellectual curiosity. Tyler had requested a dinosaur-themed party, which came as no surprise to anyone who knew him. His room was filled with dinosaur books, fossils and models. He could recite facts about different species with the enthusiasm of a paleontologist, and his passion was infectious to anyone willing to listen. Mark and I had planned an elaborate celebration, with a paleontologist coming to present real fossils, dinosaur-themed games, and a cake shaped like a T-Rex. We decided to host the party at our house, inviting both family and Tyler's classmates. I had been looking forward to seeing Tyler surrounded by people who appreciated him for who he was. His school friends understood his interests and energy level, and I hoped their presence would create a positive atmosphere that might help our family see Tyler through different eyes. The planning process had gone smoothly until Jessica called 3 days before the party. She had been characteristically blunt in her concerns about the guest list mixing Tyler's school friends with family members. "Are you sure it's a good idea to have all those children together?" she had asked. "You know how Tyler gets in stimulating situations. What if he has one of his episodes in front of his classmates?" I had bristled at her terminology. Tyler didn't have episodes. He had moments when he became overwhelmed, just like any child might in certain circumstances. But I had bitten my tongue and assured her that I had everything under control. "I just think it might be better to have separate celebrations," Jessica had continued. "A family dinner for relatives, and a different party for his school friends. That way, if there are any behavioral issues, it won't be embarrassing for him." Her suggestion had infuriated me, but I had remained calm. Tyler is excited about having everyone together. It's his birthday, and this is what he wants. Jessica had sighed in that particular way she had, the one that conveyed her belief that I was making poor parenting choices. "Well, I hope you know what you're doing. Emma and Lily are looking forward to the party, but I just want you to be prepared if things get overwhelming." After hanging up, I had vented to Mark about Jessica's attitude. He had been supportive as always, reminding me that we knew Tyler best, and that we shouldn't let Jessica's concerns dictate how we celebrated our son's birthday. The morning of Tyler's birthday arrived with perfect October weather. The leaves were changing colors, creating a beautiful backdrop for the outdoor activities we had planned. Tyler had woken up early, practically vibrating with excitement about his party. He had helped me set up decorations, chattering non-stop about which friends were coming and what fossils the paleontologist might bring. Mark had set up tables in our backyard, arranging them to accommodate both children and adults. We had created a dig site in our sandbox, where kids could excavate replica fossils, set up a craft station for making dinosaur masks, and prepared various games that would appeal to different energy levels. Tyler's excitement was infectious, and I found myself getting caught up in his enthusiasm. This was what childhood should be about, I thought, watching him arrange the party favors with meticulous care. Pure joy and anticipation for a celebration with people who cared about him. The first guests to arrive were Tyler's classmates from school. His best friend Jake came with his parents, followed by Mia, Connor and several other children from his class. These kids knew Tyler well and accepted his unique personality without question. They understood that he might know more about dinosaurs than anyone else, but might also need breaks when things got too stimulating. Watching Tyler with his school friends always filled my heart. They spoke the same language of curiosity and imagination. When Tyler got excited about a particular fossil fact, they listened with genuine interest rather than judgment. When he needed to step aside for a quiet moment, they simply continued playing without making him feel excluded. Mark's parents, Tom and Susan, arrived next, bringing thoughtful gifts and warm hugs for Tyler. They had always been accepting of Tyler's differences, taking time to learn about ADHD and asking thoughtful questions about how they could best support him. Tyler adored his paternal grandparents, and their presence always made him feel secure and valued. My parents arrived shortly after, followed by my Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim with their teenage son Michael. The adult conversations began to blend with the children's laughter as the party atmosphere developed naturally. Tyler was in his element, moving between groups with the confidence that came from being surrounded by people who appreciated him. The paleontologist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, arrived right on schedule with a collection of real fossils that had Tyler and his friends mesmerized. She was wonderful with children, encouraging their questions and making complex concepts accessible to young minds. Tyler was practically glowing as he shared his knowledge with Dr. Martinez, who treated his expertise with the respect it deserved. Then Jessica arrived with David and their daughters. I noticed the shift in atmosphere immediately. Jessica surveyed the scene with what I had come to recognize as her assessing look, taking in the children's excited chatter, the scattered toys, and Tyler's animated conversation with Dr. Martinez. Emma and Lily seemed excited to join the activities, but Jessica held them back momentarily, speaking to them in low voices that I couldn't quite hear. "Looks like quite a production," David commented as they approached Mark and me. He wasn't unkind, but there was something in his tone that suggested he found the elaborate setup unnecessary. "Tyler's been looking forward to this for weeks," Mark replied evenly. "He loves sharing his passion for dinosaurs with everyone." Jessica's gaze followed Tyler as he enthusiastically showed one of his classmates how to properly excavate a fossil from the sandbox. "I hope he doesn't get too wound up. You know how he gets when he's overstimulated." Before I could respond, Tyler spotted his aunt and uncle and bounded over to greet them, his face shining with happiness. "Aunt Jessica, Uncle David, look what Dr. Martinez brought." He held up a piece of fossilized amber with an insect preserved inside. "This is 99 million years old. Can you believe that?" Jessica managed a smile, but I could see the tension in her expression as Tyler's excitement registered as too loud, too much. "That's very interesting, Tyler. Why don't you show Emma and Lily where they can wash their hands before they join the activities?" Tyler's enthusiasm dimmed slightly at her lukewarm response, but he dutifully led his cousins toward the house. Emma and Lily seemed genuinely interested in the fossil he had shown them, asking questions that made Tyler's face light up again. The party continued with various activities rotating as planned. Children moved between the fossil dig, craft station, and games, while adults mingled and enjoyed refreshments. Tyler was having the time of his life, and most of the guests seemed to be enjoying themselves as well. I noticed Jessica watching Tyler closely throughout the afternoon, and I could see her mental catalog building with each spontaneous outburst of excitement, each moment when Tyler's energy level exceeded what she considered appropriate. When Tyler got so excited about finding a particularly good replica fossil that he shouted for everyone to come see, Jessica exchanged a meaningful look with David. During the craft activity, Tyler had trouble with the fine motor skills required to cut out his dinosaur mask. This was a known challenge related to his ADHD, and Mrs. Patterson had taught him strategies for managing similar tasks at school. Mark quietly moved over to help him, showing Tyler how to break the task into smaller steps. I saw Jessica lean over to my mother and whisper something, gesturing subtly toward Tyler and Mark. Mom nodded with a concerned expression, and I felt my stomach tighten. Whatever Jessica was saying, it wasn't positive. The paleontologist presentation was a huge hit with all the children. Dr. Martinez had brought real fossils from different time periods, and explained how paleontologists discover and study them. Tyler was in heaven, asking sophisticated questions that impressed both Dr. Martinez and several parents. His knowledge was genuinely impressive for an 8-year-old, and I felt proud watching him engage so confidently with an expert. But I also noticed Jessica's expression growing more pinched as Tyler's questions became more frequent and detailed. At one point, when Tyler interrupted another child's question to add additional information, Jessica muttered something to David about attention-seeking behavior. The gift-opening portion of the party went smoothly initially. Tyler was gracious and enthusiastic about each present, taking time to thank each giver personally. His excitement was genuine and infectious, and most of the adults seemed charmed by his authentic responses. However, when Tyler opened a particularly exciting gift, a deluxe dinosaur encyclopedia, his joy reached what Jessica apparently considered an unacceptable level. He jumped up and down, flipping through pages and pointing out dinosaurs to anyone who would look. His voice carried across the yard as he shared facts about various species. I saw Jessica's jaw tighten, and she moved closer to where her daughters were sitting. Emma and Lily seemed perfectly fine with their cousin's excitement, but Jessica clearly felt Tyler's behavior was inappropriate for the setting. The breaking point came during cake time. We had ordered an elaborate dinosaur cake shaped like a triceratops, complete with intricate details that Tyler had specifically requested. When Mark brought out the cake, Tyler's reaction was pure 8-year-old joy. He gasped, his eyes went wide, and he began pointing out all the details he had hoped for. Look, they got the frill pattern right, and see how they made the beak. That's exactly how Triceratops skulls look in the museum. Tyler was practically bouncing with excitement, his voice raised with enthusiasm. Several parents smiled at his genuine delight, but Jessica's patience had apparently reached its limit. She stood up from her chair, her expression stern, and her voice cut through Tyler's celebration. Tyler, that's enough. You need to calm down right now. This is not appropriate behavior for a birthday party. The yard fell silent. Tyler froze mid-sentence, his joy visibly deflating. All the children turned to look at Jessica, then at Tyler, sensing the tension that had suddenly filled the air. Jessica, I started, but she held up her hand. No, Rachel, someone needs to address this. Tyler has been disruptive all afternoon.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
He's interrupting, he's too loud, and he's making everyone uncomfortable with his behavior. Tyler's face had gone white. His classmates looked confused and uncomfortable, clearly not understanding why Tyler's excitement about his birthday cake was being criticized. The adults were shifting awkwardly, unsure how to respond to the sudden confrontation. He's excited about his birthday, Mark said firmly, moving to stand near Tyler. There's nothing wrong with a child being happy at his own party. Jessica's expression hardened further. This isn't about normal excitement, Mark, and you know it. Tyler has been the center of attention all day, demanding everyone look at what he's doing, interrupting conversations, showing off his knowledge. He's being disruptive and attention-seeking. I felt anger rising in my chest, but I tried to keep my voice level for Tyler's sake. Tyler is sharing his interests with people he cares about. That's what children do at birthday parties. Normal children know how to control themselves. Jessica shot back. Normal children understand social cues and appropriate volume levels. Emma and Lily would never behave this way at a family gathering. The comparison hit Tyler like a physical blow. I could see tears beginning to form in his eyes, and my heart broke for him. His special day was being ruined by his aunt's criticism, delivered in front of all his friends and family. Tyler is not Emma or Lily, I said, my voice gaining strength. He's being himself, and there's nothing wrong with that. Jessica looked around the yard, apparently seeking support from other family members. I'm not the only one who's noticed this, Rachel. Tyler has been problematic all afternoon. Ask anyone here. Several guests looked away uncomfortably, clearly not wanting to be drawn into the confrontation. Tyler's classmates seemed confused and protective of their friend, while the adults appeared caught between family loyalty and recognition that Jessica had crossed a line. The only problem I see, Dr. Martinez interjected quietly, is an intelligent, curious child being criticized for showing enthusiasm about learning. Tyler's questions today were thoughtful and sophisticated. His passion for paleontology is remarkable for someone his age. Jessica turned her sharp gaze on Dr. Martinez. You don't have to live with the constant disruption. You don't have to watch other children become uncomfortable because Tyler can't control himself. I work with children every day, Dr. Martinez replied calmly. Tyler is engaging, respectful, and incredibly knowledgeable. I've seen nothing today that would concern me about his behavior. This seemed to infuriate Jessica even more. She turned back to Tyler, who was now standing very still, tears streaming down his face. Tyler, you are the problem child in this family. Everyone knows it, everyone sees it, but nobody wants to say it out loud. Your behavior today has been completely inappropriate, and it's ruining the party for everyone else. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler's sob broke the quiet, and he turned and ran toward the house. Several of his classmates started to follow him, but their parents held them back, unsure of the family dynamics playing out. Mark's face had turned red with anger. How dare you speak to my son that way, he said, his voice controlled but furious. How dare you humiliate him at his own birthday party? Someone needed to address his behavior. Jessica replied, though her voice had lost some of its conviction as she looked around at the horrified faces surrounding her. You just called an 8-year-old child a problem in front of his friends and family, my mother said, her voice shaking with anger. Jessica, what were you thinking? but I barely heard the conversation continuing around me. My focus was entirely on getting to Tyler, on comforting my son who had just been devastated by someone who was supposed to love and support him. I found Tyler in his bedroom, curled up on his bed, sobbing into his dinosaur pillow. My heart shattered seeing him so broken on what should have been one of the happiest days of his year. "Sweetheart," I said softly, sitting on the edge of his bed. "I'm so sorry that happened. Am I really the problem child, Mom?" Tyler asked through his tears. "Is Aunt Jessica right? Do I ruin everything?" I gathered him into my arms, holding him close while he cried. "No, baby. No, you are not a problem child. You are a wonderful, brilliant, caring little boy, and Aunt Jessica was very wrong to say what she said. But maybe she's right," Tyler whispered. "Maybe I am too loud and too much. Maybe I should try to be more like Emma and Lily." The fact that my 8-year-old son was questioning his worth because of his aunt's cruel words filled me with a rage I had never experienced before. Tyler should never have to dim his light to make other people comfortable. His enthusiasm, his curiosity, his passion for learning were gifts, not problems to be solved. "Tyler, look at me," I said gently, lifting his chin so I could see his eyes. "You are perfect exactly as you are. Your excitement about dinosaurs, your questions, your enthusiasm, all of that makes you special. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you need to be smaller to make them comfortable." As I held my son, I could hear the party winding down outside. Voices were raised in what sounded like heated discussion, but I didn't care about the family drama. My only concern was Tyler, and helping him understand that Jessica's words said nothing about him, and everything about her. But even as I comforted Tyler, I knew this couldn't stand. Jessica had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. She had humiliated my child at his own birthday party, and there would be consequences for that. I just didn't yet know what those consequences would look like. What I did know was that I had something Jessica didn't know about, something that would change the entire narrative she had constructed about Tyler being a problem child. Hidden in my desk drawer was Tyler's most recent report card, and the story it told was going to surprise everyone, especially Jessica. After spending 20 minutes comforting Tyler in his bedroom, I finally convinced him to wash his face and come back outside with me. The party had essentially ended, with most of Tyler's classmates and their parents having left quietly during the aftermath of Jessica's outburst. I felt terrible that Tyler's friends had witnessed such an ugly scene, but I was grateful that their parents had handled the situation with grace, simply collecting their children and leaving without adding to the drama. When we returned to the backyard, only family members remained, along with Dr. Martinez, who was packing up her fossil collection. The atmosphere was thick with tension, voices lowered but heated as family members discussed what had just transpired. Mark was standing near the dessert table, his jaw still clenched with anger, while my parents sat at one of the tables looking deeply troubled. Jessica and David were near the back fence, with Emma and Lily, who appeared confused and upset by the sudden change in atmosphere. I could see Jessica gesturing animatedly, while David listened with his arms crossed, occasionally glancing toward the house with what looked like concern. Tyler stayed close to my side as we approached the remaining guests. Dr. Martinez immediately came over to us, her expression kind and reassuring. "Tyler, I wanted to thank you for all your wonderful questions today," she said, crouching down to his level. "You clearly have a real passion for paleontology, and I hope you'll keep studying and learning. Scientists need curious minds like yours." Tyler managed a small smile at her words. "Thank you for bringing the fossils. They were really cool. I have something for you, Doctor," Martinez continued, reaching into her bag and pulling out a small wrapped package. "This is a real trilobite fossil from Morocco. It's about 400 million years old. I thought you might like to add it to your collection." Tyler's eyes widened as he carefully unwrapped the fossil. For a moment his earlier joy returned as he examined the ancient creature preserved in stone. "This is amazing. Thank you so much. Keep asking questions, Tyler," Dr. Martinez said as she stood up. "Never let anyone tell you that curiosity is a problem." Her words were clearly directed as much at the adults present as they were at Tyler, and I felt grateful that this professional educator had witnessed Jessica's behavior and found it as inappropriate as I did. After Dr. Martinez left, the family tension resumed in full force. My mother approached me first, her face etched with concern and anger. "Rachel, I am so sorry about what Jessica said to Tyler. That was completely out of line." My father nodded grimly. "No child should be spoken to that way, especially at their own birthday party. Jessica owes Tyler a sincere apology." I could see that most of our family members were horrified by Jessica's behavior, which gave me some measure of relief. I had been worried that others might share her assessment of Tyler's behavior, but it was clear that calling an 8-year-old a problem child in front of everyone had crossed a line that even Jessica's supporters couldn't defend. Uncle Jim and Aunt Carol approached next, both looking uncomfortable but supportive. "Tyler's a good kid, Rachel," Uncle Jim said quietly. "He was excited about his party, nothing wrong with that." Jessica was way out of line. Their teenage son Michael, who had been quietly observing the whole situation, spoke up unexpectedly. "Tyler knows more about dinosaurs than most adults. I thought it was cool how much he knows. I don't understand why Aunt Jessica got so mad." Mark's parents, who had witnessed the entire confrontation, were visibly upset. Tom put his hand on Tyler's shoulder gently. "Happy birthday, buddy. We hope you had fun despite what happened at the end." "Thanks, Grandpa," Tyler replied quietly, still subdued from Jessica's attack. Susan hugged Tyler carefully. "You're a special boy, Tyler. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As our family members gradually said their goodbyes and left, I noticed that Jessica and David remained, clearly intending to have some kind of conversation with Mark and me. Emma and Lily had been sent inside to watch television, away from whatever discussion was about to take place. When only the four of us remained in the backyard, along with Tyler, who was quietly examining his new fossil at one of the tables, Jessica finally approached us. Her expression was defensive rather than apologetic, which immediately set me on edge. "I think we need to talk about what happened," she began, her tone suggesting that she still believed she had been in the right. "Yes, we do," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "You humiliated my son at his own birthday party. You called him a problem child in front of his friends and our entire family." Jessica's jaw tightened. I was trying to address problematic behavior that everyone was too polite to mention. Tyler was being disruptive all afternoon, and someone needed to set boundaries. Mark stepped forward, his anger barely contained. Tyler was excited about his birthday. He was sharing his interests with people he cares about. There was nothing problematic about his behavior. "Come on, Mark," David interjected. "You have to admit Tyler can be a handful." Jessica was just trying to help him learn appropriate social behavior. By humiliating him, I shot back, by calling him the problem child in front of everyone. "That's not teaching appropriate behavior, that's emotional abuse." Jessica's face flushed red. "Don't be dramatic, Rachel. I wasn't abusing anyone. I was trying to help Tyler understand that his behavior affects other people. He needs to learn that he can't always be the center of attention." "He wasn't trying to be the center of attention," I said, my voice rising. "He was excited about dinosaurs and fossils and learning. Those are good things, Jessica. Those are things we should encourage in children. Normal children don't need constant redirection," Jessica continued. "Normal children can sit quietly and listen without interrupting. Normal children don't demand that everyone pay attention to what they're doing every 5 minutes." The word normal was like a knife through my heart. I had heard it so many times over the years, always used to suggest that Tyler was somehow deficient because his brain worked differently than other children's. "Tyler is normal," Mark said firmly. "He has ADHD, which is a neurological difference, not a character flaw. His enthusiasm and curiosity are strengths, not problems to be corrected." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Every parent wants to believe their child is special, Mark, but at some point you have to face reality. Tyler's behavior is disruptive and inappropriate, and making excuses for him isn't helping him learn how to function in social situations." I felt rage building in my chest as Jessica continued to dismiss Tyler's neurodivergence as poor parenting and bad behavior. This was exactly the kind of ignorance and judgment that made life harder for children like Tyler, and I was done tolerating it from family members who should have been supportive. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Jessica," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "You've never bothered to learn about ADHD or giftedness. You've never asked what Tyler's challenges are or how we can best support him. You just judge him based on your narrow definition of how children should behave. I know what I observed today, Jessica replied stubbornly. I know that Tyler was loud, disruptive, and attention-seeking. I know that other children and adults were uncomfortable with his behavior, and I know that instead of addressing it, you and Mark just make excuses. Tyler had been listening to this conversation with increasing distress, and I could see tears forming in his eyes again. He shouldn't have to hear his aunt systematically tear apart his character and his parents' efforts to support him. Tyler, honey, why don't you go inside and start opening the presents that are still in the living room? I suggested gently. He nodded and headed toward the house, but not before I heard him whisper, "I'm sorry I ruined my party." Those words broke something inside me. My 8-year-old son was apologizing for being himself, for showing enthusiasm and curiosity and joy. He was taking responsibility for Jessica's cruel reaction to his natural personality. After Tyler was safely inside, I turned back to Jessica with fury I could no longer contain. Do you have any idea what you've done? My son just apologized for ruining his own birthday party because you convinced him that his natural personality is a problem. You've made an 8-year-old child feel ashamed of being curious and enthusiastic. Jessica remained unmoved. Maybe now he'll think twice before being so disruptive. Sometimes children need to experience consequences for inappropriate behavior. What inappropriate behavior? Mark demanded. Being excited about fossils, asking questions about dinosaurs, showing enthusiasm about learning. What exactly did Tyler do today that was so terrible? David spoke up, apparently trying to support his wife. Tyler interrupted other children's questions during the presentation. He was talking too loudly during the craft activity. He was demanding attention constantly. He was sharing knowledge about his favorite subject, I replied. He was excited about learning opportunities. He was being an engaged, curious child. If that makes you uncomfortable, that says more about you than it does about Tyler. Jessica shook her head dismissively. You can spin it however you want, Rachel, but the fact remains that Tyler's behavior was inappropriate for a social gathering. Emma and Lily would never act that way. The comparison to her daughters was the last straw. I had tolerated Jessica's criticism for years, always hoping she would eventually understand Tyler's differences and learn to appreciate his unique qualities. But her willingness to humiliate him publicly while continuing to insist she was right showed me that she would never change. Emma and Lily are different children with different personalities and different neurological makeups, I said coldly. Comparing Tyler to them is like comparing apples to oranges. It's meaningless and harmful. It's not meaningless when one child can behave appropriately in social situations and another cannot. Jessica shot back. That was the moment I realized I needed to show Jessica exactly how wrong she was about Tyler. I had been trying to protect his privacy by not sharing details about his academic achievements, but Jessica's persistent attacks on his character had forced my hand. Wait here, I said abruptly, turning toward the house. Mark looked puzzled, but he nodded when I mouthed report card to him. He understood immediately what I was planning to do. I walked into the house and found Tyler in the living room, half-heartedly opening presents while wiping away tears. My heart ached seeing him so defeated on what should have been a celebration of him. Tyler, I need to get something from my office, but I want you to know that Daddy and I are handling the situation with Aunt Jessica. You don't need to worry about any of this, okay? He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Am I really a problem child, Mom? Maybe Aunt Jessica is right and I should try to be more like Emma and Lily. I knelt down beside him, taking his hands in mine. Tyler, you are absolutely perfect exactly as you are. You are kind, intelligent, curious, and passionate about learning. Those are wonderful qualities that make you special. Aunt Jessica is wrong, and I'm about to prove it to her. In my home office, I opened the locked drawer where I kept Tyler's school records. His most recent report card was right on top, along with a letter from his teacher and a report from the school psychologist. These documents told a very different story about Tyler than the one Jessica had constructed. Tyler's report card showed straight A's across all subjects, with additional notations about his exceptional performance in mathematics and science. But more importantly, it included detailed comments from Mrs. Patterson about Tyler's character, his helpfulness to other students, and his positive contributions to the classroom environment. The letter from Mrs. Patterson, written just last week, recommended Tyler for the district's advanced academic program and praised his leadership qualities and empathy toward his classmates. The psychological evaluation confirmed his ADHD diagnosis, but also documented his giftedness and highlighted his emotional intelligence and social skills. These weren't the records of a problem child. These were the records of an exceptional child who was thriving academically and socially when placed in an environment that understood and supported his needs. I gathered all the documents and returned to the backyard, where Jessica and David were still lecturing Mark about the need for stricter discipline and more consistent consequences for Tyler's behavior. "Jessica," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm, "I have something to show you." She looked up with an expression of annoyance, clearly frustrated that I was interrupting what she considered an important discussion about Tyler's behavioral problems. I placed Tyler's report card on the table in front of her, open to the grades and teacher comments. "This is Tyler's most recent report card. Please read it." Jessica glanced down at the document, and I watched her expression change as she took in Tyler's perfect grades and glowing teacher comments. David leaned over to read along, his eyebrows rising as he processed the information. "Tyler is currently at the top of his class academically," I continued. "He's reading at a high school level and doing mathematics 3 grades above his current level. But more importantly, read what his teacher says about his behavior." Jessica's eyes moved across Mrs. Patterson's detailed comments about Tyler's kindness to struggling classmates, his willingness to help others, his respectful participation in class discussions, and his positive influence on the classroom environment. "Now read this," I said, placing Mrs. Patterson's letter next to the report card. The letter specifically mentioned Tyler's empathy, his leadership potential, and his recommendation for advanced academic programming. Jessica's face was growing pale as she read, but I wasn't finished. I placed the psychological evaluation on top of the other documents. "This is from the school psychologist who evaluated Tyler for the gifted program. It confirms his ADHD diagnosis, but it also documents his exceptional intellectual abilities and his strong social-emotional development. According to this evaluation, Tyler scores in the superior range for emotional intelligence and peer relationships." David was staring at the documents with obvious surprise. "I had no idea Tyler was performing at this level academically." "That's because you and Jessica have never bothered to ask," Mark replied pointedly. "You've been so focused on criticizing his behavior that you've never taken the time to understand who he actually is." Jessica was still reading through the documents, her earlier confidence visibly shaking as she confronted evidence that directly contradicted her assessment of Tyler as a problem child. "These are the records of a child who is not only academically gifted but also emotionally mature and socially skilled," I continued. "This is a child who helps his classmates with difficult concepts, who includes children who are being left out, who shows leadership and empathy in his interactions with peers." I let that information sink in before delivering the final blow to Jessica's narrative. Tyler's teacher specifically mentions in this letter that he is one of the most well-liked children in his class, that other students seek him out as a friend and study partner, and that his enthusiasm for learning is contagious in the best possible way. Jessica looked up from the documents, her face now flushed with what I hoped was embarrassment rather than continued anger. "The problem child you described today doesn't exist, Jessica. The child you humiliated at his own birthday party is actually thriving socially and academically. He's respected by his peers, beloved by his teachers, and recommended for advanced programming because of his exceptional abilities." Mark stepped closer to the table where the documents were spread out. "Tyler isn't disruptive at school because his teachers understand ADHD and know how to channel his energy productively. He isn't attention-seeking because his curiosity and enthusiasm are valued and encouraged. He isn't a problem because he's in an environment that sees his differences as strengths rather than deficits." The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica stared at the documents as if they contained information that didn't compute with her firmly held beliefs about Tyler. David looked uncomfortable, clearly realizing that he had supported his wife's assessment without having any real knowledge about Tyler's actual functioning. "I don't understand," Jessica finally said quietly. "If Tyler is doing so well at school, why does he seem so difficult during family gatherings?" It was a fair question and one that gave me hope that Jessica might actually be open to learning rather than simply defending her position. "Because family gatherings are different from school environments," I explained. "At school, Tyler has structure, clear expectations, and teachers who understand his needs. Family gatherings are louder, more chaotic, and less predictable. They're actually challenging for most children with ADHD." Mark nodded. "Plus, Tyler picks up on tension and criticism. When he senses that someone disapproves of him, he gets anxious, which can make his ADHD symptoms more pronounced." I could see Jessica processing this information, possibly for the first time considering that Tyler's behavior might be influenced by the environment and reactions of others rather than simply being a character flaw. "The Tyler you see at family gatherings isn't the real Tyler," I continued. "He's a child who's trying to navigate a situation where he feels judged and unwelcome. The real Tyler is the one described in these documents, the one his teachers and classmates know and appreciate." David cleared his throat. "We had no idea Tyler was performing so well academically." "Jessica, maybe we've been too quick to judge." But Jessica wasn't ready to concede yet. Academic performance doesn't excuse inappropriate social behavior. Tyler still needs to learn how to control himself in family settings. I felt my anger flare again at her continued insistence that Tyler needed to be controlled rather than understood and supported. "Jessica, Tyler doesn't need to be controlled. He needs to be accepted. He needs family members who appreciate his curiosity instead of criticizing it, who encourage his enthusiasm instead of trying to dim it." "But what about other people's comfort?" Jessica persisted. "What about teaching him to be considerate of others who might find his behavior overwhelming?" Mark stepped forward, his patience clearly exhausted. "Tyler is considerate of others. That's documented right here in his teacher's comments. The only people who seem to find his behavior overwhelming are family members who refuse to understand ADHD and giftedness." I picked up the psychological evaluation again, finding the section I wanted Jessica to read. "Look at this assessment of Tyler's social skills. The psychologist specifically notes his ability to read social cues, his empathy for others, and his desire to please. Tyler isn't inconsiderate or selfish. He's actually highly attuned to other people's emotions." As Jessica read that section, I saw something shift in her expression. For the first time, she looked uncertain rather than defensive. "If Tyler is so socially skilled," she asked slowly, "why does he seem to struggle so much during family gatherings?" It was the opening I had been waiting for, the chance to help Jessica understand how her own behavior had been contributing to Tyler's struggles. "Because he's trying to earn approval from family members who have already decided he's problematic," I said gently but firmly. "Tyler knows you disapprove of him, Jessica. He can sense your criticism and judgment, and it makes him anxious. When children with ADHD are anxious, their symptoms become more pronounced." Mark pulled out his phone and showed Jessica a video from Tyler's school talent show the previous month. In the video, Tyler was presenting his dinosaur research project to an auditorium full of students and parents. He was confident, articulate, and engaging, holding the audience's attention with his knowledge and enthusiasm. "This is Tyler when he feels supported and valued," Mark said as Jessica watched the video. "This is the child his teachers and classmates know. Notice how different he seems." In the video, Tyler was the same enthusiastic, knowledgeable child he had been at the birthday party, but his confidence was evident in every gesture and word. He wasn't seeking attention or being disruptive. He was sharing his passion with an audience that appreciated his expertise. Jessica watched the entire 3-minute presentation in silence, and I could see her comparing this confident, composed child with her perception of Tyler as problematic and attention-seeking. "He does seem different," she admitted quietly when the video ended. "He's not different," I corrected. "He's the same child, the difference is in how he's being received. At school, his enthusiasm is welcomed, his questions are encouraged, his knowledge is valued, he feels safe to be himself." David was nodding slowly as he began to understand the implications of what we were showing them. So you're saying Tyler's behavior at family gatherings is influenced by how we react to him? Exactly, Mark confirmed. Children with ADHD are extremely sensitive to criticism and rejection. When Tyler senses disapproval, especially from family members he loves, it affects his ability to regulate his emotions and behavior. I could see Jessica struggling with this new information, trying to reconcile it with her long-held beliefs about Tyler's character. The evidence was overwhelming, but admitting she had been wrong would require a significant shift in perspective. I never thought about it that way, she said finally, her voice smaller than it had been all afternoon. Jessica, Tyler loves you, I said softly. He wants your approval and acceptance. Every time you criticize him or compare him unfavorably to Emma and Lily, it breaks his heart. He tries harder to please you, which can make him seem more attention-seeking, which leads to more criticism. It's a cycle that hurts everyone involved. For the first time since the confrontation began, Jessica looked genuinely remorseful. I didn't realize I was making things worse for him. You can change that, I said hopefully. Tyler is an amazing child with so much to offer. These documents prove that he's capable of being successful socially and academically when he's in a supportive environment. He could have that same success in family settings if we approach him with understanding instead of criticism. David reached over and took Jessica's hand. Maybe we should apologize to Tyler and try to do better going forward. But I wasn't ready to let them off the hook quite yet. The damage from today's humiliation was significant, and I needed to make sure they understood the full impact of their behavior. What happened today can't just be swept under the rug with a simple apology, I said firmly. Tyler was devastated by your words, Jessica. You called him a problem child in front of his friends and family. That kind of public humiliation can have lasting effects on a child's self-esteem. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time I saw genuine remorse rather than defensiveness. I was so frustrated with his behavior that I spoke without thinking. I never meant to hurt him so deeply. But you did hurt him, Mark said bluntly. Tyler is inside right now believing that he ruined his own birthday party because you convinced him that his natural personality is something to be ashamed of. The weight of what she had done seemed to finally be hitting Jessica. She put her head in her hands, and I could see her shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. What can I do to fix this? She asked, her voice muffled. How can I make this right with Tyler? It was the question I had been hoping she would ask, the sign that she might actually be willing to change her approach rather than simply defending her behavior. First, you need to genuinely apologize to Tyler, I said. Not a conditional apology about being frustrated, but a real acknowledgement that you were wrong to speak to him that way. David nodded. We both owe him an apology. We should have stood up for him instead of going along with the criticism. Second, I continued, you need to educate yourselves about ADHD and giftedness. Tyler's differences aren't character flaws to be corrected. They're neurological variations that come with both challenges and strengths. Jessica looked up from her hands. Can you recommend some resources? I want to understand better. It was progress, but I needed to make sure she understood that learning about Tyler's conditions was just the beginning. Third, you need to actively work to change how you interact with Tyler at family gatherings. Instead of looking for problems to criticize, try to find opportunities to engage with his interests. Ask him about dinosaurs. Show genuine curiosity about his knowledge. Value his enthusiasm instead of trying to contain it. Mark added, and you need to stop comparing Tyler to Emma and Lily. They're different children with different personalities and different needs. Comparisons are harmful and unfair to all three kids. Jessica nodded, tears still flowing. I can see now how wrong I've been. I thought I was helping Tyler learn appropriate behavior, but I was actually teaching him to be ashamed of who he is. Children with ADHD and giftedness often struggle with feeling different or wrong, I explained. They need family members who celebrate their uniqueness, not ones who try to make them fit into neurotypical expectations. David was quiet for a long moment before speaking. We need to have a conversation with Emma and Lily too. They've been hearing us criticize Tyler, and that's not fair to any of the children involved. I was encouraged by David's recognition that their attitudes had affected not only Tyler, but also their own daughter's perceptions of their cousin. Emma and Lily love Tyler, I said, but they've been learning from your example that his behavior is problematic. They need to hear from you that Tyler's differences are acceptable, and that family means supporting each other unconditionally. Jessica wiped her eyes and looked toward the house where Tyler was presumably still opening his presents alone. Is it too late to salvage this birthday? Can we try to end the day on a better note? I considered her question carefully. Tyler had been deeply hurt by her words, and I wasn't sure he was ready for immediate reconciliation. But I also knew that genuine remorse and changed behavior could go a long way toward healing the damage. That depends on whether your apology is genuine, and whether you're truly committed to changing how you interact with Tyler going forward, I said. He's a forgiving child, but he's also smart enough to sense when someone is just going through the motions. Mark looked at his watch. It's getting late, and Tyler has had an emotionally exhausting day. Maybe we should focus on helping him feel better about himself right now, and save the family reconciliation for another day, when everyone has had time to process what happened. I agreed with Mark's assessment, but Jessica seemed eager to make amends immediately. Please let me apologize to Tyler, she pleaded. I can't leave things the way they are. I need him to know that I was wrong, and that I'm sorry. Looking at Jessica's tear-stained face, and David's genuinely remorseful expression, I decided to give them the chance to begin repairing the damage they had caused. But I was determined to protect Tyler from any additional harm. You can apologize, I said finally, but Tyler's emotional well-being comes first. If he's not ready to hear it, or if he becomes upset, the conversation ends immediately. Both Jessica and David nodded in agreement, and we all headed toward the house to find Tyler, and hopefully begin the long process of healing the wounds that had been inflicted on his birthday. When we entered the living room, Tyler was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by opened presents, but he wasn't examining them with his usual excitement. Instead, he was quietly holding the trilobite fossil Dr. Martinez had given him, turning it over in his small hands, while tears silently rolled down his cheeks. The sight of my son crying alone on his birthday, surrounded by gifts he was too heartbroken to enjoy, nearly broke my resolve to give Jessica a chance to apologize. Every protective instinct in my body screamed at me to send her away, and focus entirely on comforting Tyler. But I also knew that healing had to start somewhere, and Tyler deserved to hear that what happened wasn't his fault. Tyler, sweetheart, I said softly, sitting down beside him on the floor. Aunt Jessica and Uncle David would like to talk to you for a minute. Is that okay? He looked up with red, puffy eyes, glancing nervously between Jessica and David. Am I in trouble? The fact that my 8-year-old son thought he might be in trouble, after being humiliated at his own party, made my heart ache. This was exactly the kind of self-blame that could damage a child's sense of self-worth for years to come. No, baby, you're not in trouble at all, I assured him, wrapping my arm around his shoulders. You haven't done anything wrong. Jessica stepped forward hesitantly, and I could see that she was struggling to find the right words. She knelt down to Tyler's level, her eyes still red from crying. Tyler, I need to apologize to you, she began, her voice shaking slightly. What I said to you at your party was very wrong, and I'm deeply sorry. Tyler looked at her warily, not responding immediately. He had always been sensitive to the emotional undercurrents around him, and I could see him trying to process Jessica's sudden change in attitude. I called you names that were hurtful and untrue, Jessica continued. You are not a problem child. You are a wonderful, smart, curious boy, and I was completely wrong to say otherwise. Tyler's grip on the fossil tightened, but I was being too loud at my party. I was asking too many questions and interrupting people. Jessica's face crumpled at Tyler's words, hearing him repeat the criticisms she had leveled at him. No, Tyler, there was nothing wrong with being excited about your birthday. There was nothing wrong with asking questions about dinosaurs. You were being yourself, and that's exactly who you should be. But you said I was the problem child, Tyler whispered, fresh tears starting to fall. David stepped forward and knelt beside Jessica. Tyler, your Aunt Jessica was wrong to say that. We both were wrong. We didn't understand some things about you, and instead of trying to learn, we made unfair judgments. I watched Jessica carefully, ready to intervene if this conversation took a wrong turn, but she seemed genuinely remorseful as she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Tyler, can I show you something? She asked gently. He nodded cautiously as she pulled up what appeared to be a photo album on her device. These are pictures of me when I was your age, Jessica said, scrolling to a photo of herself at about 8 years old. Do you see what I'm doing in this picture? Tyler leaned closer to look at the image, which showed Jessica standing in front of a science fair display, gesturing enthusiastically while talking to a group of adults. "You're explaining something," Tyler observed. "I'm explaining my volcano project to the judges," Jessica confirmed. "And look at my face. Do I look calm and quiet?" Tyler shook his head. In the photo, young Jessica was clearly animated and excited, her mouth open mid-sentence, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Jessica scrolled to another photo. "This is me at my birthday party that same year. What do you notice?" In this picture, Jessica was surrounded by friends, laughing loudly with her head thrown back, clearly the center of attention as she opened a present. "You look really happy," Tyler said softly. "I was really happy," Jessica agreed. "And I was being loud and excited, just like you were today. But nobody told me I was being inappropriate or that I was a problem child. They let me be excited because it was my birthday." I could see understanding dawning in Tyler's eyes, as Jessica showed him more photos of herself as an enthusiastic, energetic child. "The difference is that people understood that excitement and curiosity are good things when I was your age," Jessica said. "But I forgot that as I got older, I started thinking that children should always be quiet and controlled, and I was wrong." Tyler looked up at Jessica with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "So it's okay that I like talking about dinosaurs?" "It's more than okay," Jessica said firmly. "It's wonderful. You know so much about dinosaurs, and you should be proud of that knowledge. When you share facts about fossils and prehistoric creatures, you're teaching other people interesting things. That's a gift, Tyler." Mark and I exchanged glances, both of us cautiously optimistic about Jessica's apparent transformation. Her apology seemed genuine, and her approach with Tyler was exactly what he needed to hear. "Tyler, your mom showed me your report card," David added. "We had no idea how well you're doing at school. Your teacher says amazing things about you." Tyler's face brightened slightly. "Mrs. Patterson says I'm one of her best students. She says I help other kids when they don't understand math problems." "That's because you're kind and smart," Jessica said. "And I should have seen those qualities instead of focusing on things that didn't matter." Tyler was quiet for a long moment, processing this new information. Finally, he looked up at Jessica with the directness that was so characteristic of him. "Why did you think I was a problem child if I'm doing good at school?" It was a fair question, and I was curious to see how Jessica would answer it. She took a deep breath before responding. "Because I didn't understand that your brain works differently than some other children's brains," she said. "Your mom explained to me that you have something called ADHD, which makes you learn and think in special ways. Instead of trying to understand that, I thought you just weren't following rules." "ADHD isn't bad," Tyler said. "Matter-of-factly, Mrs. Patterson says it just means my brain is wired differently. She says it's like having a race car brain in a school zone world." Jessica smiled at Tyler's description. "That's a perfect way to put it. And race cars are pretty amazing, aren't they?" For the first time since the confrontation at the party, Tyler smiled back. "Yeah, they are." The mood in the room was shifting, but I knew this was just the beginning of what needed to be a much longer process of rebuilding trust and changing family dynamics. "Tyler, Aunt Jessica, and Uncle David are going to learn more about ADHD so they can understand you better," I said. "And we're all going to work together to make sure family gatherings are fun for everyone." "Does this mean I can still talk about dinosaurs at family dinners?" Tyler asked hopefully. "Of course you can," Jessica said immediately. "In fact, I'd like to learn more about dinosaurs from you. Maybe you could teach me some of the things you know." Tyler's entire demeanor changed at her invitation. His shoulders straightened, his eyes brightened, and the smile that had been missing all afternoon finally returned to his face. "I have lots of dinosaur books upstairs," he said eagerly. "And I have a fossil collection. Do you want to see them?" Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "I would love to see them. Will you show me?" As Tyler jumped up to lead Jessica and David upstairs to his room, I felt a cautious sense of hope. The damage from the party confrontation wouldn't be healed overnight, but this was a promising start. Mark and I stayed in the living room, giving Jessica and Tyler some space to begin rebuilding their relationship. We could hear Tyler's excited voice drifting down from his bedroom as he shared his fossil collection and explained the different time periods when various dinosaurs lived. "Do you think this change will last?" Mark asked quietly. "I hope so," I replied. Jessica seemed genuinely shocked when she saw Tyler's report card and school records. Sometimes people need concrete evidence to challenge their assumptions. About 30 minutes later, Tyler came bounding down the stairs with Jessica and David following behind, both of whom looked appropriately amazed by Tyler's expertise. "Mom, I taught Aunt Jessica about the Cretaceous period," Tyler announced proudly. "And Uncle David wants to know if we can go to the Natural History Museum together sometime." "That sounds like a wonderful idea," I said, pleased to see Tyler's confidence returning. Jessica sat down beside me on the couch, looking more relaxed than I had seen her in years. "Rachel, I owe you an apology too. I've been criticizing your parenting without understanding the challenges you're navigating or recognizing Tyler's successes." "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "It hasn't been easy watching Tyler absorb criticism for being himself." "I can see that now," Jessica said, looking at his school records and seeing how well he's doing academically and socially. "I realize the problem wasn't with Tyler at all. The problem was with my expectations and my lack of understanding." David nodded in agreement. "We've learned a lot today. Tyler is clearly thriving when he's in supportive environments. We want to make sure our family gatherings become one of those supportive environments." Tyler, who had been listening to this conversation while organizing his birthday presents, looked up with a serious expression. "Aunt Jessica, are Emma and Lily going to think I'm weird now that they saw what happened at the party?" Jessica's face showed genuine concern at his question. "Tyler, Emma and Lily love you very much. They were confused and upset when they saw adults being mean to you. I need to have a conversation with them about what happened and make sure they understand that the adults were wrong, not you. They always want to play with me at family gatherings," Tyler said thoughtfully. "Even when you seemed mad at me, they still thought I was fun." "That's because children often see things more clearly than adults do," I observed. "Emma and Lily see you for who you are rather than focusing on behaviors they don't understand." Jessica sighed deeply. "I have a lot of work to do to repair the damage I've caused, not just with Tyler but with my own daughters too. They've been learning from my example that criticizing family members is acceptable." Over the next hour, we had a long conversation about ADHD, giftedness, and how to create more inclusive family environments. Jessica asked thoughtful questions about Tyler's challenges and strengths, and both she and David seemed genuinely committed to educating themselves about neurodivergence. Tyler gradually returned to his usual cheerful self, especially when Jessica asked him to explain the differences between herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores in the dinosaur world. His expertise was evident, and Jessica's interest appeared authentic rather than forced. As the evening wound down, Tyler made a request that surprised all of us. "Can we have a do-over for cake time?" he asked. "I want to blow out my candles again, but this time with everyone being happy." My heart melted at his simple request. Despite everything that had happened, Tyler still wanted to share his birthday joy with his family. "Of course we can," I said immediately. "Let's relight those candles." Mark retrieved the dinosaur cake from the kitchen while I found the candles we had used earlier. As we set up for Tyler's second birthday wish of the day, Jessica pulled me aside. "Thank you for giving me the chance to make this right," she said quietly. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness after how I treated Tyler, but I'm grateful you're letting me try to do better." "Tyler deserves to have family members who love and support him," I replied. "If you're truly committed to changing how you interact with him, then we're willing to move forward." When we gathered around the cake for the second time that day, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of tension and criticism, there was warmth and acceptance. Jessica encouraged Tyler to make a big wish, and when he blew out his candles, everyone cheered enthusiastically. "What did you wish for?" Emma asked as she and Lily ran over to hug their cousin. Tyler grinned. "I can't tell you or it won't come true. But it was a good wish." Later, as Jessica and David were preparing to leave with their daughters, Jessica knelt down to hug Tyler goodbye. "Thank you for teaching me about dinosaurs today," she said. "And thank you for being patient with me while I learned how to be a better aunt." Tyler hugged her back tightly. "It's okay, Aunt Jessica. Mom says everyone makes mistakes sometimes." After they left, Tyler helped us clean up the party decorations, chattering happily about his favorite presents and his plans to display his new fossil in his bedroom. "Did I have a good birthday after all?" he asked as we folded up the last tablecloth. "You had a great birthday," I assured him. And more importantly, you handled a difficult situation with grace and maturity. I'm very proud of you." That night, as I tucked Tyler into bed, he asked me a question that showed how much he had processed during the day's events. "Mom, why did it take showing Aunt Jessica my report card to make her understand I'm not a problem child?" I considered his question carefully before answering. Sometimes adults make assumptions about children based on limited information. Aunt Jessica was judging you based on how you acted at family gatherings, but she didn't know about all the wonderful things you do at school. "But couldn't she have just asked you about school instead of calling me names?" Tyler asked with the logical directness that characterized his thinking. "You're absolutely right," I said. "She should have asked questions instead of making assumptions. That's one of the things she's going to work on doing better in the future." Tyler was quiet for a moment before speaking again. "I'm glad she knows the truth now. Maybe family gatherings will be more fun." As I kissed Tyler goodnight, I reflected on the dramatic events of his 8th birthday. What had started as a celebration had turned into a family crisis, but ultimately led to important conversations and the possibility of healing long-standing tensions. In the weeks that followed, Jessica made good on her promises to learn about ADHD and giftedness. She read books, attended a support group for families of neurodivergent children, and had several conversations with Tyler's teacher to better understand his needs and strengths. The changes in Jessica's behavior were gradual but consistent. At our next family dinner, instead of criticizing Tyler's enthusiasm about a new dinosaur documentary he had watched, she asked him to tell everyone about the most interesting facts he had learned. Instead of comparing him unfavorably to Emma and Lily, she celebrated the unique qualities each child brought to the family. Tyler blossomed under this new acceptance. His confidence at family gatherings increased, and his relationship with Jessica began to heal. He still got excited about his interests, but now that excitement was met with encouragement rather than criticism. Emma and Lily also benefited from Jessica's changed approach. They learned that family members should support each other's differences rather than trying to force conformity. They became more accepting of neurodivergence in general, and served as advocates for Tyler when other extended family members occasionally made insensitive comments. The transformation wasn't instantaneous or perfect. Jessica still occasionally caught herself focusing on Tyler's challenges rather than his strengths, but she had developed awareness of her tendency to criticize and made efforts to reframe her observations positively. Most importantly, Tyler learned that his worth wasn't dependent on other people's approval or understanding. He internalized the lesson that his differences were strengths rather than deficits, and he developed confidence in advocating for himself when faced with misunderstanding or criticism. Looking back on Tyler's 8th birthday party, I realized that sometimes family crises, as painful as they are in the moment, can lead to necessary conversations and positive changes. Jessica's public humiliation of Tyler had been devastating, but it had also forced us to address long-standing issues that might have continued festering otherwise. The report card that revealed Tyler's academic and social successes had been the catalyst for Jessica's transformation, but the real change came from her willingness to examine her assumptions and commit to doing better. Tyler's resilience and capacity for forgiveness had made reconciliation possible, and our family had emerged stronger and more understanding. Tyler is now 10 years old, thriving academically and socially, and still passionate about paleontology. He recently won first place in his school's science fair with a project about fossil formation, and Jessica was there cheering him on with the same enthusiasm she had once reserved only for her own daughter's achievements. Family gatherings are now truly celebrations, filled with acceptance, encouragement, and genuine appreciation for each child's unique gifts. Tyler's dinosaur expertise is valued rather than tolerated, and his enthusiasm is seen as contagious rather than disruptive. The lesson I learned from Tyler's birthday confrontation is that sometimes protecting our children means challenging family members who refuse to accept their differences. Standing up for Tyler by presenting evidence of his successes wasn't just about proving Jessica wrong, it was about ensuring that my son grew up knowing his worth wasn't negotiable. Every child deserves family members who see their potential rather than their problems, who celebrate their strengths rather than focusing on their challenges, and who love them unconditionally for who they are rather than who they think they should be. Tyler got that gift, eventually, and it made all the difference in his sense of self-worth and confidence. The problem child Jessica had described at Tyler's party never really existed. What existed was a bright, curious, enthusiastic boy, whose differences made him special rather than problematic. Sometimes it takes concrete evidence like report cards and teacher evaluations to help people see past their assumptions and recognize a child's true value. Tyler's 8th birthday will always be remembered as the day our family learned the difference between supporting children and trying to control them, between understanding differences and judging them, and between love that accepts and love that demands conformity. It was a difficult lesson but ultimately a transformative one that benefited everyone involved. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.